Well, it's always something when you're mechanicking. In this instance, the head broke off of my engine mount bolt while I was bolting it in, torquing to spec. These bolts, sometimes they'll do that, especially if you are working on the ride plate. It's not that one so much as the intake grill underneath those smaller bolts. They'll snap on you, especially if you've been in salt water. I've had that happen. But you see, look at this. I thought I was going to have to pull, all three of my other ones are torqued. I was able to pull the mount bolt just like that, and it came right out, even with that piece sticking out. The mount bolt came out. Just want to go over a couple things on the Waverunner. If you are taking off the air box, carburetor, all that, you would think that it's easier to come on this side and work on it. It's not. It's actually easier to go on the other side. It's because of the angle that all the bolts are at. They're real close to the wall here when you're doing this. It's a lot easier to get over on that other side and just lean over and catch them from the other side. That is a tip, trust me, from having to pull the carburetor multiple times. And of course, you have to shim up your engine after you put it on with these shims to get this alignment. You can feel it, you know, how this piece lines up with this piece. You can feel it if it's lined up. I mean, it's a pretty, you're supposed to measure it with a feeler gauge, but yeah, I'm gonna have to get that mount under and feel it, check it again. But that gives you less vibration when you have that lined up with those shims, and there are different thicknesses of shim to affect that repair. So that's just a tip video, and then I'll show you at the end of this the easy way to take this big exhaust piece off in one shot, and you don't waste any gaskets doing it. So this is the piece you want to pull as one unit for your easy access to your carburetor. You've got the rubber boot here. You got to take the clamps off of the big outer one, both of them, slide it down that way. Take just one side of this clamp, the inner boot. Take this one side off. These are 14 nuts that go through the top pieces. You're probably going to have to pull the other two 14s that sit like this. And then you've got two 12 millimeters that attach here. You've got one 14 that attaches here, and two 10s that attach your temperature sensor here. And finally, one boot clamp that goes to your water box, aka / muffler. And this whole unit comes out as a piece. That is the easiest way to pull this as a unit and get to and work on your carburetor, and I'll show you when we're sitting it down how it all fits together. So you got engine dropped in. Next step, you know, you got all your wiring. One tip that I will give you is, while you've got your engine hanging, go ahead and connect your battery cable to your starter. Go ahead and connect your pipes that are down here. See this one? I usually just do the one clamp here. Disconnect. Connect that while it's in the air. It makes it a lot easier for you. Also get your ground wire and your hot wire wired to your battery while you got your engine hanging in the air. And before you set it down, you'll save yourself a lot of headache of trying to get that stuff in later. Then you've got to reconnect your stator wires. Don't let these wires intimidate you. They're all color coded. If you know color matching, just match your wires back up color for color. The only two that you've got that are the same are the greens, and those are stator wires, and it doesn't matter which one goes into what plug. They've got these plugs pretty idiot proof, believe it or not, and they fit up under this. It's just got a little clip that clips down. You've got a fuse. If your jet ski doesn't start, or you got nothing, you got a fuse that can blow that sits right here that's accessible without taking this whole box apart. 3 grounds under each one of these screws. You're going to need an impact driver to pull these loose usually, and that's all I can say about that. They're not that expensive, especially pick them up at Harbor Freight. I think they're less than $10. Impact screwdriver is a pretty much a must when you're working on jet skis, especially saltwater skis, where those bolts are going to be, those screws are going to be just tough on the, you know, some of them are hard to get out, guys. All right, we'll get this on. I'll get the carb on, and I'll show you the one-step installing of the muffler assembly. Okay, so on the XL800, get the electronic box back together. Like I said, you got a fuse access right here. If it ever blows a fuse, it won't start or whatever. This is the old glass style fuses. But you've got 14 8mm bolts, 2 12s on the end that mount it. It has different places to put tie wraps. You've got a couple of tie wrap zip holes through the cover to tidy your wires up when you're done with the job. It's actually got 2 more on top from the factory. I think it has some run through the bottom but not the top. You've got the 2 wires obviously for your cylinders, self-explanatory by length. But here on the bottom you've got a battery wire and a wire that goes to your starter. The difference is the battery wire has a red covering on it. The starter wire has a clear covering on it, and it also has some of this as it gets down next to the engine. The ground wire runs through that small hole right there, and you can see it's wrapped in the electrical protector. And then the battery hot lead runs through that hole right there. That's how it all goes back together, in case you forgot and have no reference to go with, and I'll move on to the next step. And I will say, these 2 wires at the bottom, the thing that confused me is it would seem like battery would be on the side where the battery was, but it's not. That side goes to the starter. This is how it sits. And then this side goes to the battery, so they're crossed. But it's easy to tell with the covering that they have over the wire. Red covering battery, clear covering starter. Okay, so this is how you want to pull this piece of the exhaust assembly to adjust your carburetors. You've got your clamps, inner, outer. There's your inner clamp. You don't ever have to loosen this one. Both of these have to be loosened. You can just shove that back. You don't have to take those hoses off there, but loosen those clamps. You've got to take all of these 14s out, 4 of these, pull these brackets, lay them aside, because you got these studs sticking out. And so you have to slip those off, and you're gonna have to pull the spark plugs. So all these 14s, a 13/16 socket for your plugs, pull those so you can access the nuts that go on there. There's a nut and a washer. Then you've got one hose that fits in the back right here. I tuck it up high under this to try to keep it high, because if it goes low, it's just a little harder to get to. And then you've got the hose, this one, that fits on the grease fitting that is right here. This is a grease fitting to grease and lube that bearing. You've got 2 10mm here that hold your temp sense on, and then the 1 clamp that bolts to the water box. I call it a muffler, but it's, you know, it won't rust. It's a water box. That thing always has water in it. You can't really get all of it out. And that, you just pull this whole assembly, and of course there's 1 14 here and 2 12s here. And when you do your 12s, you want to wrap them with electrical tape, because when you're taking them in and out, you know, these are stainless steel, they're not magnetic, so they're not going to pull up for you, and it makes it easier so you don't lose them down in the hull. They bolt up onto the jugs right there. But that's the easiest way to get to adjust or remove your carburetor is to pull that as one unit. And of course, you got to kind of work that end down in there and get it in there and get everything lined up. Finger tighten all of your bolts. Don't go tightening them all until you get everything with a bolt set in it, or you're going to regret it, because one of them are going to be off somewhere. And usually it's this 14 that goes through this bracket here in the back and goes through this piece. That one won't line up a lot of times if you go ahead and tighten these 12s and everything else up. Just get them all finger tight, get them all started before you go tightening any of them down. And I always finish up, tighten the boots. That's where I finish, that boot and then the back boot. And that's the easiest way to get to your carburetor. Of course, it's 4 10 millimeters and 2 Allens in the center to pull the carb, and of course all of the lines and hoses. I have primed my oil lines, new oil lines, Oetiker clamps. Got new rebuild kits in this carburetor. I'm trying SBT kits. We're going to see if that's a mistake, but I'm going to try them, and we'll see. I'm probably going to regret that and probably going to be pulling it, but we'll see. Because I think Mikuni's really the only one you need to fool with on these. Anyhow, that is it. This jet ski should be running before the night is through. Thanks for watching Shade Tree Jet Ski. Hope that helps you with the quickest, easiest way to get to your carb. That's the easiest way to do it, man.